Have just a few short minutes. Steve said I could have 30 and then he will take 45. He told me 10, and I'm going to try to use far less than 10 minutes. Uh, I was honored to make the trip to see the Christians there, to get to know Steve and Will better. And Steve has a little more formal report on our activities. What I'm going to share with you, you may think of more as just some random thoughts. That's kind of the way I put it together. I don't really have a pattern for them. I want to read Matthew 28, verse 19, just that one verse. And I want you to pay particular attention to the first word. First word is go. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Yes, there's plenty of work to do here. But part of that command is to go, not just to stay. I encourage you individually to either travel to encourage Christians like those we met in Guatemala, or if you're not able to do so personally for whatever reason, directly help someone, even if it's just with words of encouragement, who is able to do that. We had a wonderful song service here Wednesday night as the first time that we had worshiped with English-speaking Christians in what seemed like quite a while from the schedule that we kept. It's great to have heard the different parts again, to sing in parts, to see music on the page. This is a picture of the songbook that we used most of the time we were there. We actually sang this song Wednesday night. It's the Spanish version of Low and Gravy Lake. While it's great for that wonderful music, we need to sing with the enthusiasm that these Christians sing with. There were no notes in these books at all. They sing the tunes by heart, and they sing them from the heart. I don't want to take away from our wonderful singing here at all, but they might have just a little bit of an upper hand on us in the way they sing from the heart. This gentleman is leading singing, and man, he's not afraid of this microphone. He was singing with everything he had right into that microphone. He was enthusiastic. Sometimes maybe we have taken decently and in order a little bit too far, and again, I'm not saying that we're completely missing the boat there, but have we turned it into dull and uninvolved? The Christians in Guatemala say amen to just about everything. And it seems to be a chorus of the entire group. They're definitely involved. And as I say that, Steve will probably say this as well. I was instructed to give you greetings from Christians that I can't count in places that I would have to look to tell you all the names of. That's one of the standard things in that culture is they send greetings from one group to the next. The brother leading singing here is blind. As I understand the situation, he might end up being one of the first elders in the church in Guatemala. From what I picked up, his lack of vision is a big holdup for him at the moment. And again, unless I'm mistaken, the gentleman seated on the left of the picture is one of his sons. This picture was taken after one of the sisters passed out during my lesson. No smart comments. Now you're involved. She had been worshiping, although she was in so much pain that because of a health condition, she had to stand through the entire, I think this was either an hour and a half or 2 hour service. And I noticed that she was standing and she was uncomfortable, obviously, And in the middle of my lesson, she just wound up in the floor. Unfortunately, that's not terribly uncommon for this sister. Do we have that kind of a desire to hear someone present a lesson from God's Word? And she was having to use a translator to understand what was being said. An example of hospitality that other Christians were sharing for us. We were truly honored guests in every home that we walked into. At the back of the picture, kind of at the head of the table, is Geronimo. His daughter's family hosted us for breakfast one morning. She had a baby 2 weeks prior to this, so the baby's now 3 weeks old, but still had us into their house for breakfast. As a great example of teamwork, her husband did most of the preparation for breakfast. Might have been the most purchased food that we saw on one table, as opposed to having been prepared there at home. But they were very willing to have us in the home. Steve, unless he's taking it out, I'll show you this picture again in a few minutes. My comment to go along with it is never underestimate how powerful something as small as a box of crayons can be. We got some help from people here. 3 people come to mind in particular that we were swapping emails and text messages with, getting information, getting the website rearranged a little bit to make it easier for the Spanish-speaking Christians to see some of the materials that we have available on our website here. It was definitely a team effort in lots of ways. I appreciate the opportunity, and as strange as changing speakers in the middle of the service may be to you, Steve and I have got it down pretty well. We did that quite a bit while we were there. So thank you for your attention. Steve will give you a more formal version.
Thank you, Jared. I know those were just a few snippets of Jared's experiences. I think he would have liked maybe to have had 45 minutes. And even then, I can tell you this, we spent a week in Guatemala, and we went at a torrid pace, traveling 5 of the days that we were there and preaching on those days as well. It would take about a month to tell you what we did in a week. Frankly, there was so much that was going on. There's not any way we can do it justice, but I think it's very important to give you all, especially here at Eastside, a feeling for not what we did so much, but for the work in Guatemala and your connection to it. And I want, as we go through the material this evening, I just want every member of this congregation to understand how vitally connected we are to everything that's going on down there that I'll be describing. On December 28th, Jared, Will, and I flew to Guatemala. We left out of Huntsville early in the morning. We went over to Atlanta, and in the afternoon we flew down to Guatemala. Our goals were to visit brethren that are supported by Eastside, and there are 5 preachers in Guatemala that we are helping to support. We wanted also to become familiar with their work, to encourage them and the churches in the area through our preaching, and help with benevolent needs as the opportunity and the needs arose, and again to strengthen the bond between the saints at Eastside and these brethren with whom we've been having fellowship for some long period of time. We took over 100 of these booklets with us, translated into Spanish, from our summer series this last week. I preached a lesson out of this booklet 2 Sunday nights ago, you may remember. And these booklets, I can only say, if we were selling them, they would have gone like hotcakes, but they went like hotcakes anyway. And we'll talk some more about that as we go through the description. We also took a large number of Spanish songbooks with us, similar to the one that Jared had the picture of, no music in them, but just words. These Spanish songbooks have been purchased by David Ray via the ship here, and then we took them with us. We also took some funds for benevolent needs that were just given to us by individuals. A handful of you gave myself and Will and all a little bit of money to take down there and said if you saw a need to help somebody out, to help them out. And I'll report about that at the end of session this evening. We landed early in the afternoon in Guatemala City, which hopefully you can make out on the map there. It's the big red dot. Guatemala City is the largest city in Central America. It has a population of well over 1 million people. It's not much different from a lot of big American cities. There's lots of traffic, and there are a few nice areas, some nice shopping centers, but many, many poor neighborhoods with tin roofs and all of that sort of thing. We met David Ray and Geronimo Koch. I mentioned David already. We'll see a picture of him in just a minute. David, right now, for the last 2 years, has been preaching in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But the 6 years prior to that, he preached in Guatemala. He speaks Spanish fluently. He's American, obviously. In fact, his wife is a nephew of George Otis. Have I got that right? Yes. Okay. So there's a connection to East Side there. The circle that you see on the map is pretty well the circle of the area. It's we went around sort of in a circle of the area of churches that we visited and places that we went. The roads that we traveled on, that circle is probably only about 200, 250 miles around. We probably went 350 or 400 miles because of the roads that we went on and so forth. But that's the kind of traveling we did over about a 5-day period of traveling while we were there for the total of 7 days. The first place that we went, and you can see on the map, in Guatemala City is very close to a place called Mixco. In fact, I would say that Mixco, or we would say Mixco, is a suburb of Guatemala City. And it's here that we entered the house of Francisco Ventura, who is one of the 5 preachers that we support down there. Been supporting him for a long, long time. Here's David Ray standing outside the home of Francisco. So this gives you sort of a view of what the buildings were like in this section of the city. This would be a very common sort of place. Block walls, sort of tin roofs once you get to the top. A lot of open air. It's right on a street. And of course, with the New Year's going on, we heard all sorts of firecrackers and things into the night that night, as we did almost every night during the work. And some of them here were extraordinary to that. You know, I don't know what an M80 is. I think these were whole sticks of dynamite that they were going out into the street. But anyway, that was going on. So this is Francisco and his wonderful wife, Yolanda. And they are just pillars of the Lord's people in this area. Francisco's been preaching for decades. Eastside's been supporting him, I think, since 1987, if I'm not mistaken. For a long, long time, he has done a tremendous work planting churches, moving on to another place, planting a church, encouraging the brethren. There are hundreds of people who are Christians, multiple churches that exist because of the work that Francisco has done, and he has been able to do that work because you have supported him. You have had a hand in everything that's been done in fellowship in this work. Nobody else is supporting Francisco. All of that is coming from Eastside. And I want you to understand what a difference you've made in the lives, the souls, and the eternities of the people that Francisco has touched with the gospel, because you've been able to support him all of these years. I don't know about the parrot that you might see also in the picture. I don't think he preaches much, but he does talk. Here's some of the group gathering. They're kind of suspicious of the parrot as well, as you can see in that picture. This is actually sort of a hallway slash garage slash meeting place in Francisco's house. A church does not actually meet here. These were just people that came from neighboring churches around and met in this hallway in Francisco. Of course, they have many Bible studies and things here. There's another church in this area, not very far from Francisco's, that actually has over 100 members in it. So lots of Christians in this area. Again, a lot of that relating to Francisco's work. So this is the first Monday we were there. I preached to a pretty good crowd that evening. We only had time for one sermon. They assembled in this hall garage. And I preached this lesson from the summer series that I preached actually 2 Sunday nights here. And David Ray translated it for me. Here's another picture of the crowd as it gathered and sort of filled in the back. It's literally standing room only. These booklets were received. We gave out one per family. People were begging for more. That happened everywhere we went. We preached at least one lesson out of the booklet, and people would get those in their hands, and they said, "Can we have another one? We want to start a Bible study with some of our ladies here. We want to use this over here. I want to share this with some preachers," whatever it was. And they were begging for more of these booklets, far more than we could carry down with us. But those were put to very good use as well. A number of brethren visited here from another place down the road called Sumpango, where Francisco used to preach. And to help you understand your relationship to this work, and why people from Sumpango, which is again a little ways down the road, would come to be a part of it simply that night, to be with Francisco and hear me preach the gospel. After the meeting was over, we were going through an album of pictures in Francisco's place, and here's a car parked in the same place the next morning. But we're going through an album of pictures, and here's something we ran across. These were children here at Eastside who had corresponded with the children in Sumpango several years ago. You'll be able to recognize, I see Gracie and Aaron and Douglas and 2 or 3 others there, I think, that I recognized when they were pretty small children. They kept this picture all of these years as a memorial memory of contact from people at Eastside. And they kept another picture too of the Eastside elders when they all had hair. Long hair. And you can see the eldership there. It's a cherished memory, a cherished photo that Francisco and Yolanda are keeping. I want you to see what you meant to these people. Well, we have to go on, and we had to go on. We slept the night there, the 3 of us in one room, good accommodations for Guatemala, and we moved on the next day. We had to get a flat fixed on the way. The tire was leaking, and so we stopped to get the flat fixed. You could get your tire fixed, and right next there, you could buy a carnita, some meat or something, whatever you wanted. I think the kid that changed the tire, how old was he? 8, 9 years old? Just a little kid. Changed the tire and got that fixed for us. So this is a typical street scene in crowded areas around the city there. So we were on our way down to the next city, which is Palin, where Jose Maria Koch preaches. This is Geronimo's brother. This is where Jose Maria and his family live. It's also a hair salon where his daughter cuts hair, and it's also the meeting place of the church. So it's a triple play. This is the outside of the place. You see the tin roof and the brick wall, and the tin roof doesn't actually sit on top of the wall. There's open air there. Everything is pretty much open to the air all the way through Guatemala, especially before you get up in the mountains. Here is one of the meetings. We actually had a meeting in the afternoon, another meeting in the evening. We preached several times there that day. And it had a lot of enthusiasm and interest in all of the meetings there. Here I am preaching in one session. On the left, Jared, again, David Rayford, the translator there next to Jared. On the right, we were really privileged to get to meet this family. This is Jose Maria, his wife Irma, the remaining children in the house. Jose Maria has 2 or 3 older children that are away and married as well. So it's a big family. They basically have one sleeping room, has 3 beds in it. They gave that to us to sleep in. They slept on the concrete floor outside of the hair salon. So this was on a very busy street, incredibly busy street. Traffic all day and all night, big trucks. There's a bus stop in the front of their house, noise all of the time. But it's where they live, and they're just wonderful, wonderful people. That's a picture of a sink. This is the kind of sink we saw in every home we were in. It's identical. I think it must be made out of concrete. What you see on the right is sort of a big container of water. And when they have water available, they fill that up with water. And then they use these little pans to dip water out of over into the sink on the left to do the washing and whatnot. There's a drain in that part. This is where you wash your dishes. The water is not safe to drink. It's not safe probably for them to drink. It's not safe to drink, but they wash in it. They wash their dishes in it. And this arrangement we saw in every home that we were in. Now, there were a couple of homes that also had some nice porcelain sinks in them in a place or two, but they also would have a sink like this that they would do the washing. There are not many of us who would allow our families to live in these conditions. But they have to live in these conditions all the time. The next day we had to be up. We toured the town just a little bit. There was a bit of a festival going on. We went through the square. Then we hit the road, going down to the little town of Rio Bravo. It's a town of about 700 people, 7,000 people, down toward the coast of Guatemala. The weather got warmer as we went. What you're looking at there is a picture of sugarcane fields, some mountains in the distance, and if you look at the far, far distance, you might be able to see a cloud-shrouded volcano, Aconcagua, I think, in the far, far distance there. There's a ridge of volcanoes that goes through this section of Guatemala, several of them. You can see them miles and miles and miles away. They're over 1,200 feet high, all of them, over 1,200 feet high. I think the highest is 12,000 feet high. 12,000 feet high. And I think the tallest is 13,000 feet high. So huge volcanoes. A couple of them are active, some of them, most of them are not. But that's just part of the scenery of Guatemala. They can grow almost anything. There's sugarcane, there's bananas, there's pineapples, there's all sorts of fruit, mandarins, and everything else that you can possibly imagine can be grown here. Corn all over the place. Things being grown up and down the mountainsides. Just an incredible place for agriculture. But this was a lot of the scenery as we went down the road toward Rio Bravo, where we were to meet the youngest of the preachers that we were going to be with. And this is Jose Humberto. And so we met up with him, and he came on his motorcycle, had us at a given place, and then led us on to his home. Jared decided he'd get on the back of the motorcycle, and he and Jose would lead the way to Jose's house. So this is the narrow way to Jose's. Really narrow way to Jose's. With extreme dips and bumps and things in the road, so much so that more than once, as will tell you, the fat gringo, that's me, had to get out so that the vehicle could make it over the bump. We'll always notice that the scraping was on my side. I don't know why he was able to notice that. But anyway, after some time and several months, we came to the house of Jose and Berto, and here is his beautiful family. Wife and 2 children, the wife is pregnant. We support Jose, but not nearly enough. The other men that we support, we've supported many, many years. Jose's a younger man. We've only been giving him $150 a month. That's not enough to make it in Guatemala. A single brother in Christ, and then also giving Jose another $150 a month. That's $300 a month. That's not enough to make it in Guatemala either. And that single brother is having to withdraw his support as a man for Jose. So Jose is trying to support this family. He has some carpenter skills, but not enough carpenter work to be able to make money to support his family. These were by far the most humble circumstances that we encountered as far as the place that we stayed while we were there. Here's a picture of his home. That's all there is to it. We slept again in their beds, and we're privileged to share a meal with them that they provided. We took off that evening to preach there in Rio Bravo, where Jose preaches, and also some congregations around there. So we drove back out. We decided not to get the vehicle out. We barely got it in, so we decided not to get the vehicle out. So we called a couple of little taxis. They have these 3-wheel taxis called tuk-tuks. And they're just sort of narrow. Used to be like mail trucks in the United States. It was old 3-wheel sort of mail trucks. That's kind of what they remind me of. And here's Will. Will was very taken with the tuk-tuks. But we all crammed into about 2 tuk-tuks and made it the distance after some little while out of Jose's neighborhood and to the meeting place of the church that evening. They do have a little building there. There were a number coming from surrounding areas. It was hot, so there would not be sense in trying to cram everybody into that building in a hot afternoon. So we met in the courtyard adjacent to the building, and also some of the members live in the same little compound. So here we are meeting in the courtyard in Rio Bravo. We again preached at least one lesson out of the booklet and some other lessons as well. There's a young man by the name of Henry Garcia. He's the only other translator that we were able to use. Really the only other person that was fully bilingual, I think, that we met. There might have been 1 or 2 others, young ladies that were somewhat bilingual. But Henry lived in the United States for about 6 years, I believe, up in the Northeast. He was here illegally. When he became a Christian, he went back home, which was the right thing to do. He has really good translating ability and a good knowledge of the Scriptures, so he's very, very valuable. He was able to give David a rest from translating. I think he's somebody that we need to keep in contact with and use on succeeding trips and in other ways, maybe translate materials and things like that. He's a fine young man. Was with us all the days on our travels as well. So Jared used Henry as a translator quite a bit. That evening, Jared and Will made a lot of friends. I got into a discussion with some of the older men about a Bible question and was sequestered with them for a while. And then Jared and Will joined us in that a little bit later. Some Bible study that went pretty late into the evening that evening. The next morning, this is the view from outside Jose's home. You see 2 volcanoes in the distance, banana trees in the foreground there. Just a lot of beauty of Guatemala that was all around us. God's creation is wonderful everywhere, and we were taken with it in all that we saw in Guatemala. But it was immediately from here on to the next town of Chiquitao. And here is the preacher that we support there. His name is Ricardo Ventura. He's Francisco's brother. Like Francisco, he's been stalwart in the church, establishing works, being a solid preacher, bringing many to Christ, and solidifying the works there. You see his fairly large family intermixed with the gringos there, and just very beautiful people. Ricardo has a relatively nice home there at Chicacao. This was New Year's Eve that we arrived there, so there was a lot going on in the city that evening. But still, the brethren wanted to meet, and we did so. Here's their meeting place, which is fairly new. Again, a lot of this due to the efforts of Ricardo and the brethren there. They've been able to build this place within the last 5 years, and it's a really nice facility for. You might have been wondering about how anybody down there had a microphone. This is the place where the psalm leader had the microphone. So it's a nice facility for Guatemala. And we had a good number there, mainly from the church of Chicacao. There were some people from elsewhere as well. I want to back up just for a minute and notice the young man in the upper left standing next to Jared. That is Ricardo's oldest son, Juan Manuel, who also is beginning to preach the gospel. He preaches in a town, San Marcos, some distance from here. He doesn't have any support. He has some health problems, but he's a very capable preacher, I believe, and he's seeking support to preach the gospel. The name of the church there in San Marcos is Mosquito, the Mosquito Church, so that's easy to remember. But Ricardo's a good fellow. But here we are, Jared getting ready to preach that evening in Chicacao, and of course he does so. And here is the group of saints that meets there. Most of these are members of the congregation in Chicacao. Here's Jared preaching, Henry translating. There's a little inset there, and in that little inset is another picture of the elders at Eastside. This little armoire, whatever you call it, was right up in front of the auditorium, and what it did was it held the psalm books and Bibles and things to keep them secure and out of the dampness and whatnot. So it was their book rack, basically. People would go open it and grab a song book or whatever. And every time they did so, they'd see a picture of the elders at Eastside. It was a much more modern picture than the other one. I showed you a different picture. But again, here is the feeling about the group at Eastside that these brethren have. You know, the photo of the elders is in front of the congregation. They see it every time they open the door to the psalm. That's what you need today. Jared mentioned that I was going to show. This is not the same picture you showed, Jared. You showed day 2. I'm showing day 3. I'd like to explain to you what happened. Ricardo told us a very moving story that not long ago, one of the teachers of our children's classes here, sent down to them a box of crayons. Some other teaching material, like a beginner's Bible in Spanish. And they took that box of crayons and had a study for young children in their home for weeks. I think it lasted possibly 3 months. They had up to 25 children attend that study. They taught them about the days of creation. Many of the children were from the community, not children of Christians. Learning about God and the days of creation, coloring the days of creation, because one of our teachers sent a box of crayons. This is Dogny's family. We met Dogny the next morning, actually. His wife has some serious health issues, having Jared along, for those who don't know, Jared is a nurse practitioner. Having him along on a number of cases, in a number of instances to help people with their health problems was invaluable. Not only did he do a great job teaching, but his medical skills and interest in their physical well-being was very well received. He examined this lady and was able to give her some advice about her condition. I think he's consulting now with several of them, doctors up here, to see about getting various ones their needs. I can tell you a lot about dog needs, and I'll just move on. Here's another picture from Chicken Cow near Ricardo's home, a volcano in the distance and some beautiful flowers. This is the drive up now into the mountains. We're heading sort of from the lowlands up into the mountainous regions to Shayla, Quetzaltenango, Tenango, up in the mountains, where we'll be with two congregations then the last 3 days of our stay in Guatemala. This is the Shayla Urbina area where we stayed for those 3 days. It doesn't really give you a very good idea of what's going on there. This is the general area that we were in. We're up in the mountains, blue skies, mountains and hills and volcanoes around us there. And for the most part, fairly humble houses. This is Will preaching that night at a congregation, and I still can't say this, it's P-A-C-H-A-J. I think it's Pacay, something like that, Pacay, whatever. I'm not very good in Spanish. But two of Geronimo's sons kind of hold this group together. It's not far from the other group where we were. These are just a few miles apart, but far enough apart that people can't walk easily between the two. So this church was started over in that area. Will's preaching, first sermon he ever preached on the power of God. Excellent lesson. It was very well received, and appreciate Will being with us and the work that he did, his interest in the brethren there, his interest in being an example of what a Christian ought to be and sharing the gospel with others. I thought it was very powerful. Here they are listening to Will's sermon that night. Earlier in the day, we preached here all afternoon and into the evening. As Jared mentioned, Jared's giving aid to this lady. She had a stent in her bile duct that had become clogged. And the great pain that caused her to pass out. And Jared's attending to her there. Jared tried to get her some medicine and whatnot for pain. And consulted with her again the next day. She's got some serious health problems. Here's the church actually in Urbina, where we would then spend the next 2 days preaching and in fellowship with these saints. This is where Geronimo really is located. In fact, his house is behind this building. Here is sort of the street in front of the building. The building itself is down next to the turquoise building in the middle of the picture. You see a cow, you see a guy walking. That's sort of how the neighborhood was. Here's Jared and Henry and Urbina. Again, Jared doing good work preaching, and Henry doing a good job translating. Some of the saints in Urbina. Here's how it looked on Sunday. Again, it's a fairly large building, one of the larger ones we were in, and a pretty good crowd. Sunday night, we met in the home of Andres and learned about a medical problem of his 8-year-old daughter, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We began to get sick. I think Will got sick on Saturday, and I was coming down with something on Sunday. We're very, very thankful that the Lord blessed us for all of that to hold off until we finished our work. We were blessed to be able to do all the work we intended to do without sickness interfering at all. We're so thankful for that. And God blessed us in so many ways. Everybody gets sick. You don't mind getting sick. You just hate it if it interferes with the work of God. And God bless us with that. Talk just a minute about, as I said, we were given some funds from individuals and help with benevolent work. Just a real quick recap of things we did with that. Jerry, and myself, and the funds that were given to us. 400 quetzales. Takes 7 quetzales more or less to make a dollar. So if that, you figure that up, 500 quetzales is not that much money really in dollars. It's not even $100 quite. But to an elderly brother, Rio Bravo, who was unable to eat solid food due to hernia, so for his nutritional drinks, supplied him with that. 610 quetzals to Renee Rio Bravo, who's the mother of Jose and Berto, for outstanding bills that they had. They were really having a rough time. 1,000 quetzals to Renee, a brother in Catarina. He's paralyzed by a misplaced injection in his spine. We provided him with medical and living expenses. 600 quetzals to Esperanza for medical tests and procedures. 600 to Andrea, in Urbina, this is the 8-year-old in need of further medical tests. Jerry can tell you the exact, looked at the x-rays. Her leg doesn't go into her hip socket like it's supposed to. She was born that way. She has some issues with that. So she needs more x-rays and medical testing and see what can be done with that. And then we gave 300 quetzals to Jose Humberto because of his meager support that he's getting in the situation with his family. Again, that only amounts to maybe $400, that much, to help him out over the short term. It's a privilege to take the trip. I want to thank the congregation here for sending us. I want to express appreciation to my fellow workers. Jared is a fine student of the Bible, is an able communicator of God's Word. He's filled with love and passion for God's people. He came out all through the trip. His medical skills, as I mentioned, were a help every day. And I appreciate him being a fellow worker. Will was with us every step of the way, offered help numerous times, carried the books, passed out the books, preached sermons, was an encouragement to brethren, carried out what was happening in the lives of these brethren. And again, so thankful to have him along. Anytime you take a trip like this, it's a changing experience. You have to almost take it to understand how much it changes you to experience it. But I hope you got the flavor of it tonight. Our fellowship with these brethren in the gospel is a privilege, brethren. I hope you feel that. God has blessed us so richly to be able to share the gospel with these people. It's not just true of folks in Guatemala, it's not just true of the folks in Guatemala, Zimbabwe. It's true of everybody in a fellowship with, but we are blessed to be able to have fellowship with these people. They would love to have closer association with us. Feel that we are truly sharing the gospel with them. The one, if you could call it complaint, it really wasn't, but the one thing that they said they wanted everywhere we went, let us hear from the saints at Eastside. Let us know about you. Communicate with us about anything regarding the gospel. Respond to our reports. Just send us we got your report and we're praying for you, sort of thing. And I think that's been lacking. And the reason for that is the language barrier. None of them clearly speak English. None of us, except maybe Oscar and a couple of others, speak English. And communication is difficult, but to the very best of our ability, let's pray for them. Let's find ways to communicate our love and support as often as possible. And let's thank God that He has blessed us as He has to have fellowship with the gospel of Christ with folks like this. Thank you for your good attention. I'm sorry I did take the whole 45 minutes, I guess. tonight, we obviously haven't talked about what to do to be a Christian. If you know what to do and you're ready to respond to the gospel invitation is open. If you're a Christian who needs to confess the law, now's the time to do that. It's something that's been done publicly, or you need to confess publicly. God's grace, we take it everywhere. The gospel is for all. It's for folks in Guatemala, His grace is, and it's for you right here tonight. If you need to avail yourself of it, we ask you to come while we sing the voice.